The movie opens with a newly married couple named Cliff and Sydney. They've just arrived in Hawaii for their honeymoon, and they're excited to explore one of the island's remote beaches. Their plan is simple: take a long hiking trip through the wilderness and enjoy the adventure together. The next day, they begin their journey by helicopter. During the ride, they come across another couple. The woman asks if she can catch a ride with them, but her partner, Kale, immediately shuts the idea down. And before long, both couples go their separate ways. Once Cliff and Sydney reach the trailhead, they start hiking deeper into the island. Not long into the journey, they come across a narrow and dangerous path that's difficult to cross. Just then, a man named Nick shows up and helps them get through safely. The favor quickly turns into a friendship, and the three continue down the trail together. Further ahead, they run into a group of young women discussing something disturbing. According to them, a dangerous couple has been targeting people in the area. Several travelers have already disappeared, and rumors of a killer pair hiding somewhere in the wilderness have spread across the island. Hearing this instantly puts Cliff and Sydney on edge. Still, they continue forward with Nick and eventually reach a beautiful waterfall. That's where they meet Gina, Nick's girlfriend. Even though the scenery is breathtaking, Cliff can't stop thinking about the story he just heard. To make matters worse, there's barely any phone service. Eventually, he finds a spot where he gets a signal and quickly searches online for information. What he discovers makes his stomach drop. Reports mention a mysterious couple connected to multiple deaths in the area. There's even a blurry photo of the suspects, though the image is far from clear. And right then, someone unexpected shows up. It's Kale and his partner, the same couple they met earlier. Kale tells Cliff that incidents like these happen almost every year. According to him, the killer couple has been active for a long time, and nobody knows who they really are. The tension grows even stronger when the hikers learn they'll need permits for the next part of their trip. Cliff and Sydney already have theirs, but when Cliff checks his backpack, the permits are gone. His first suspicion is Kale. Convinced something isn't right, Cliff checks Kale's belongings, but the permits aren't there either. The following morning, Cliff and Sydney continue their hike alongside Nick and Gina. By now, both couples secretly suspect each other. Cliff and Sydney are starting to believe Nick and Gina might be the killers. At the same time, Nick and Gina have begun wondering if Cliff and Sydney are hiding something themselves. After a long stretch of hiking, the group takes a break. That's when Cliff shows Sydney the blurry online photo of the suspected killers. Looking at it closely, he becomes convinced that the people in the image are Nick and Gina. Sydney isn't buying it. The picture is too unclear, and she points out that it could easily be someone else. With no real proof, they continue their journey. Before long, heavy rain begins falling across the trail. Everyone starts setting up camp for the night. Then Nick suddenly says something that catches Cliff's attention. He claims he saw a figure moving deeper in the forest. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's the killer couple. Either way, Nick wants to investigate. He asks Cliff to come with him. The two head into the woods, but Nick moves far ahead while Cliff falls behind. Alone among the trees, Cliff suddenly gets the feeling that someone is nearby. Moments later, he spots a man and immediately confronts him. But before anything can happen, the stranger quickly explains why he's there. He's actually carrying the permits Cliff accidentally left behind at the hotel. After getting the permits back, Cliff returns to camp, where Sydney and Gina are waiting. The first thing Gina notices is that Nick isn't with him. Worried, she asks where he went. Cliff explains that Nick continued deeper into the forest alone. Not long afterward, Nick finally returns. And he's not empty-handed. He's brought back a wild boar, giving the group a much-needed meal. As everyone gets dinner ready, Gina casually mentions that she once spent a month working at a butcher shop and starts helping prepare the food. But instead of making Cliff feel better, the moment only increases his suspicions. By now, both he and Sydney are convinced that Nick and Gina are the killers. Cliff and Sydney make a decision. Once they reach the beach tomorrow, they'll find an excuse to separate from Nick and Gina and leave on their own. The next morning, the hike continues. But before they get very far, a police helicopter appears overhead. A loud announcement orders everyone in the area to head toward the authorities immediately. Soon, all four hikers meet with a police officer, and what they hear changes everything. The killer couple has supposedly been caught. According to the police, it's Kale and his wife. During a search, officers discovered human teeth and several personal belongings connected to previous victims. Just like that, the threat seems over. The suspects have been arrested. The fear, the suspicion, and the doubts everyone had about one another begin to disappear. Relieved, the four continue their journey and eventually reach the beach. After reaching the beach, Cliff suggests visiting a series of beautiful sea caves nearby. Nick likes the idea and before long, the two men head out toward the caves in separate boats. Back on shore, Gina decides to film them and picks up Cliff's camera. At first, everything seems normal. The camera contains wedding photos of Cliff and Sydney, but as Gina studies the images more carefully, something immediately feels wrong. The couple in those wedding photos isn't Cliff and Sydney at all. They're complete strangers. Panic takes over. She starts screaming for Nick, desperately trying to warn him, but he's already too far away to hear her. She tries calling him, but there's no signal. With no other choice, Gina drops the camera, grabs an axe, and races toward a high cliff where she might be able to get Nick's attention. A few moments later, Sydney arrives and notices the camera lying on the ground. When she sees the photos, she immediately realizes what's happened. Gina knows the truth, and now she's a problem. Sydney quickly takes off after her. Meanwhile, Nick and Cliff have already reached the sea caves. The place is peaceful, quiet, and unbelievably beautiful. Nick relaxes for a moment, but something doesn't sit right with him. And that's when the movie finally reveals the truth. Through a series of flashbacks, we learn that Cliff and Sydney are not who they claim to be. They're actually a deadly pair who specifically target newly married couples. Whenever they learn about honeymooners traveling alone, they track them down, eliminate them, and take over their identities. Their victims' documents, names, and personal histories become part of their own lives. That's how they've been moving from place to place without attracting attention. The truth about Cale is revealed as well. He was completely innocent. Cliff secretly planted evidence inside Cale's belongings and manipulated the situation so police would focus on him instead. Even the man who returned the missing permits had unknowingly helped Cliff's plan. Cliff convinced him that Cale and his wife were suspicious and should be reported. As a result, the authorities investigated Cale, found the planted evidence, and arrested the wrong people. Back in the present, the mask finally comes off. Without warning, Cliff pulls out a gun and fires at Nick. Nick falls into the water below. From the cliff above, Gina witnesses everything. Cliff immediately notices her and tries to stop her, but she manages to escape. At the same time, Sydney catches up to Gina, and a struggle breaks out between them near the edge of the cliff. Both women fight desperately. During the chaos, Gina manages to break free, while Sydney loses her footing and falls into the water below. Then Gina's phone suddenly rings. By pure luck, it's a call from a phone company representative. Gina quickly gives her location and explains that she's in danger. By now, Cliff has climbed back up the cliff. He nearly catches Gina, grabbing at her as she tries to escape. But somehow, she manages to get away again. Looking down, Cliff sees Sydney below. He tells her to mislead the police if they arrive, and then takes off after Gina. But there's one thing Cliff doesn't know. Nick is still alive. Earlier, Nick had explained that a metal plate had been placed inside his skull after a military injury. The shot struck that reinforced area, saving his life. Injured but alive, Nick grabs an axe and heads into the forest after Cliff. Ahead of him, Gina is running through the jungle as fast as she can. Cliff is right behind her. Eventually, Gina stumbles across a group of hikers. They immediately notice how frightened she is and stop to help. She wants to keep moving, but they insist on finding out what's wrong. Then Cliff arrives. Without missing a beat, he tells the group that Gina is his wife and that she's suffering from a mental breakdown. According to him, she's confused and running away from him, but Gina firmly denies everything. She tells them a killer is chasing her. One of the hikers happens to be a doctor. After briefly examining Gina, he sees no signs that she's confused or disoriented. Then he looks at Cliff. Something about Cliff's behavior raises immediate concern, and in that moment, Cliff realizes his story isn't working anymore. His cover is gone. The situation erupts into chaos. Gina runs again, desperately trying to survive. Before Cliff can catch her, a figure suddenly crashes into him from above. It's Nick, still alive. The impact sends both men to the ground. Gina turns around and sees him. For the first time since discovering the truth, she has hope. Her boyfriend survived, but the danger isn't over yet. Cliff manages to reach for his gun again. This time, Nick is standing directly in front of him. Cliff tries to fire, but there's a problem. Earlier injuries have left him unable to use the trigger properly. His shot never comes. Nick immediately takes control of the weapon. Now the gun is pointed at Cliff, and at that exact moment, a police helicopter arrives overhead. Sydney is inside it. From the air, the officers see Nick holding the gun. To them, it looks like Nick is the attacker. They order him to lower the weapon. Cliff actually smiles. As far as he's concerned, he's won. He tells Nick that if he makes a move, the police will assume he's the killer. And even if Cliff gets arrested, he believes he can talk his way out of it. Then he reveals one final secret. His real name isn't Cliff, it's Rocky. Years earlier, he stole the identity of the real Cliff after targeting him and taking over his life. Now he plans to do the same thing to Nick, as just another identity, just another victim. Above them, the police are preparing to act. But before they can make a mistake, Gina steps directly in front of Nick. She wraps her arms around him, refusing to leave his side. The helicopter crew watches as the two hold each other tightly. It's obvious they genuinely love one another. Watching from above, Sydney notices it too, and for the first time, she sees the difference between Nick and Gina's relationship and her own life with Rocky. Nick truly cares about Gina. Rocky never cared about anyone but himself. She finally understands that she was never his partner. She was just another tool in his plans. Sydney immediately warns the police. She tells them Rocky is about to make another move, and she's right. The moment Rocky lunges for a weapon, the officers react. This time, the threat is stopped. The nightmare finally comes to an end. With the danger gone, Nick and Gina are safely rescued. Later, aboard the helicopter, Nick reveals something he's been carrying all along, a wedding ring. He's had it for months, waiting for the perfect moment. The two have been together for over a year, and Gina has always hoped this day would come.